Now, Taylor, I suppose, the best place to start with these things is always at the beginning. It feels to me like you've had this incredible kind of emergence as a writer in really like a very short span of time, with these three films now: Sicario, Hell or High Water, and now Wind River, which you've also directed. How long have the ideas for these films been kind of percolating simultaneously? I mean, is this something that you've been developing over many years?
No, actually, I came up with the idea for Sicario fairly quickly. I was in southern Arizona and I saw some things and that was pretty shocking, and the idea just kind of hit me. As I was writing that, I thought it would be really interesting to explore the modern American frontier and look at it, really under a microscope. And so I came up with the idea for Hell or High Water, and then again Wind River. But they were all inspired by events that were taking place, with and to people that I knew. And so people were telling me these stories about events that were happening in their lives, and I took those and built a world around them.
And that's why you call this a trilogy of films, effectively, that there are thematic links that kind of tie them together.
There's a lot of thematic links. Beyond that, it's also really studying, the nature of fatherhood and failure and grief. They're all really meditations on grief and moving on from a tragedy without ever getting closure. I was really intrigued by that notion.
I'm fascinated, first of all, by the line that opens the film, that this is inspired by true events, and then the statistics that you pull up at the end of the film. Tell me about how this particular story kind of started to develop. Because you've lived on Wind River at some point.
Well, I spent a lot of time. I live very, very close to the res. I spent a lot of time on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and the initial genesis for this idea was when I was on the res. There was this girl that was, really respected in the community, and she had gotten a basketball scholarship. She's about to graduate high school. She disappeared, and then they found her, and she'd been killed. And it was just devastating to the community because this was a pillar. This was a good one, a really good girl that had achieved so much. Never solved. And that happened in the late 90s, and it just burned in me. And so that was really the root of, and then I heard that same story time and time again. With regards to the specific statistic that you see at the end of the film, I really wanted to find some type of hard number that could give some weight and some reality to this issue. And so I had two attorneys that worked on the film, and I said, find me a statistic that really explains the level of violence and the tragedy of what's taking place here. And I want to know how many women are missing. That's what I want to know. How many unsolved crimes, how many missing women? And they looked for 3 months, and they called and said, we can't. We called everybody. We called CDC, we called Department of Justice, we called everyone. No one has a statistic. We have them for every other demographic, but we cannot find them for Native American women on the reservation. And I said, well, that's our statistic then.
What's fascinating to me about the film is, it works on a level of pure entertainment. It is a, it is a kind of a gripping thriller, but at the same time, because you're dealing with a real set of people, a real way of life, there's a huge responsibility that comes with that. And I know that was tied in. I wonder if you could explain how that was tied into your choice to direct the film.
Well, I got really lucky with Sicario and with Hell or High Water with those directors, and I just couldn't guarantee I'd get that lucky a third time, And it was really important to me because of the amount of friends that I have in Indian country that it be told a very specific way, and you always endeavor to make a good movie, obviously, but it was more important to me that it was respectful and approached in a very specific manner than it was that it be good. If it was bad, so be it, but at least it would be right within their eyes. So that's why I chose to direct it.
And I mean, for most people, the idea of like making a movie in the snow, that changes location, changes landscape on a dime, You know, these are things that you'd want to kind of do when you've had plenty of experience under your belt. I mean, tell me about just kind of figuring all that stuff out, because I imagine incredibly complicated.
I mean, as an actor, some of the biggest clusterfuck scenes I ever did were like at a dinner table. So it didn't.
Fair enough.
It didn't snow. You know, I don't have to light it. It's all. I don't have to dress the set. There's no. It's just everything's there. Just don't step on it until I say action. That was really the only. And then I figured out how to fill it up when they did, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, so it's just, you know, directing a movie is difficult under any circumstances, and there's a certain element of just jump in, you know, and just go.
And, you know, I think, like, the whole thing is going to hinge on who you put in those lead roles, because they're going to be your partners for this experience. And Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, incredible performers, incredible actors, brilliant in this film. Was it always them? Were they always in mind?
From day one. Now it took me a long time to get Jeremy. Lizzie I went to from the beginning. She was who I wanted from day one, and she was the first person to sign on. And I wanted to get Jeremy. He wasn't available. He was doing Arrival with Denis, who I called and said, Denis, can we work? Can we? I said, Othello, no, we cannot. There is no way. I'm shooting my movie. I can't do it. And it took me so long to get the financing put together that he became available. And so then I was able to get him.
Awesome. Yeah. Now listen, I'd like to throw this open to the audience, see if we have any questions. If you raise your hand, we have one right in the front here.
I just want to thank you for writing these women's roles. They're just fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And we have a question here, just in that first row.
Choose Graham Greene, and also, did you have elders on the set at all to guide you?
I did choose Graham Greene, and I did have elders. Yes, to both. When we built the, you know, you see the sweat lodge in the scene. It's just for a brief moment, but I had people come who, you know, a sweat leader to govern that, to make sure, much to the screaming of the line producer, because it costs like $400. Fucking line producers, man.
I know. Question right here.
You create such an immersive world in all of your movies. You just feel like you're almost every character. And I'm wondering about on this particular movie with the cast and crew, because it was based on real events. Did it change them, you know, to train these characters?
Well, you know, an interesting thing. You know, Lizzie does a lot of volunteer work for a place here in Los Angeles that helps, you know, kids who've been sexually assaulted. So she'd been very immersed in this for quite some time. To a person in the Native American casting that I did, and I didn't ask this, everyone told me when they auditioned, they had all had a friend or a family member or someone who'd experienced this. So they were already, the work was done to a large degree, sadly, you know, because everyone had experience in this in some fashion.
Yeah, we have a question here, and I'll come to you.
I really like what you've done with like westerns. You kind of contemporize that. I was wondering what some of your favorite westerns were.
My favorite western's Unforgiven, by far, which was a genre buster itself. If you think about it, it was the first one to really destroy the notion of the white hat and the black hat, and it was really unconventional. And I remember when I saw it, I was like, well, that's the last western. No more Silverados. That's pretty much the end of it, which was also great. But you know, I think Unforgiven's my favorite. Outlaw Josie Wells is pretty close.
You know, before I forget, I have to ask you about the music in this film. It's like I've never heard a score like it. Tell me how it kind of came to be.
So Nick
cool
Cave and Warren Ellis did the score, and I told them, I said, look, I don't want any big drums. I don't want any flutes. I don't want any stereotypes. This is a world people don't know, so I want you to make me a score for a science fiction film. I want a score about another world. I want it to sound like it's another world. No percussion, just nothing. They went to Thailand, actually, and found instruments. They came back with all these weird instruments that weren't technically guitars, but then they told me how they weren't, but they kind of looked like guitars to me. But those guys are wizards. Warren Ellis made this massive glass didgeridoo that he would blow in to give it percussion. One of the highlights of my professional career is going to the UK and watching them record. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. In a barn in Brighton. It was exactly what you would expect Nick Cave and Warren Ellis to do. It was great.
Never had a bad time in a barn in Brighton. Did you have a question here? And then
That could be misinterpreted terribly.
I know what I meant.
I've read some interviews where you talk about writing complex characters with simple plots, and I'm wondering if you could, and I know your approach to structure is somewhat different than most mainstream approaches. I was wondering if you could talk about, along your creative process, if you could talk about how you thread the needle of staying true to your creative vision while dealing with notes from the studios.
Well, I don't take them. That's how I deal with them. You know, when I write an original work, and that's what this is, it's from my mind, you can't give me notes on that. You can decide not to make it, and that's fine, but you're not giving me notes. So, you know, Sicario, Hell or High Water, Wind River, those are first drafts. As far as what you're asking from a screenwriting standpoint, the first thing I have to figure out is what's my world, what's the arc, and when I say the arc, I've got to, what is driving my hero, okay, or everyone in that world, and I like everyone in the world to be driven by the same thing, and for this it was, how do you move on from tragedy without getting closure, and I wanted everyone to endure that same thing, not just Jeremy Renner's character. And then once you decide that and you figure out a general structure, then for me, I decide, okay, what genre am I going to beat up this time? And so with this one, it was the TV crime procedural. So this is basically just CSI Wyoming. That's all it is. And then it's like, fuck you, CSI, here's how we're doing it. You know, so that was the genre that I decided to bend. And I told this in a 2-act structure. You know, Sicario was a 5-act structure. Hell or High Water was a 3-act structure, reversed. And this was 2 acts, like a play. So you have the first half, which ends after Martin says, go get him. And then you're in an entirely different movie.
I realise I've been neglecting everyone in the top half of the theatre. It's because you're very small and I can't see you. So anyone up there? Yeah, a lady right in the middle there.
Hi, yes. I just want to first say hi. I'm actually the researcher for Yellowstone, which I'm excited about. But I just wanted to ask, since you're now directing, you went from acting to writing to directing. Was that always an end goal for you?
First, I didn't know I had a researcher.
Yeah. The art department, yes.
That's great. I have work for you. Yeah, no, I didn't know. I wanted to tell stories. I thought acting was the way. But being the killer on virtually every procedural on TV wasn't creatively fulfilling. But it's pretty cool. When I wasn't the killer on CSI, it was a twist that fooled probably most of you.
Did they think you were going to be the killer for
Oh, it
most
was
of the
set up.
episode?
It was set up the whole time. I was certainly the killer, and then I wasn't, which relieved my mother greatly. Once I started writing, and I was writing original ideas as opposed to, seeking material to adapt, which makes it a much more collaborative effort with producers and studio executives. Then you start to look. Sicario was miraculously done, as was Hell or High Water, and Denis asked me after I saw the first cut of Sicario, Taylor, what did you think? And I said, Denis, it's like watching someone dance with your wife. If you do it bad, it's really upsetting. And if you do it good, it's really upsetting. So now I dance with them.
Yes, in white there.
Is that me?
Yep.
Cool. So you came from directing, and from acting, and I want to know when you were directing, do you direct actors the way you wanted to be directed when you were acting, or did you just let them be and let them get on with it and then just kind of go in there when things weren't working?
Well, I think because I had been an actor for so long, I know how to talk to actors. You know, a lot of directors that I worked with as an actor, you know, directors talk in result. Okay, I need less here, give me more there. I think this should be here. I think, you know, try this. But actors, you know, they think in process. They need to know why. They need to understand why less, why more, why contain it, why am I going here? So when you can deliver the why, it's a much more organic way for an actor to find things. You don't want to tell an actor what to do because then you're limiting their art, but you want to help guide their motivation and help them understand the world you've created. So, and I think as an actor first and then a director, I have a certain style of acting that I really like and a certain essence in an actor that I like. So I think that most of my work was done in casting, which meant that I didn't have to direct actors all that terribly much on the set, because I think I cast the movie really well.
Question right here. Yeah.
Now that you've sort of made it impossible for anybody else to do good westerns for the next decade, is there another genre that you are looking forward to tackling, or another subset of America that you want to see undone?
You know, I didn't set out to just make westerns. It's, you know, ordinarily the way this works is you write 4 westerns, they make 1. I didn't expect all of these to get made in the order they were written. So I don't know. I mean, I was as captivated by, you know, tense dramas, you know, from Kramer versus Kramer to Insider. Insider was a really influential film on me. To, you know, science fiction fascinates me, whether it's Gravity, which was very well done, or Sunshine, which was extremely well done. And there's even elements where you blend genres together. If you think about it, there's a great film with Lawrence Fishburne called Event Horizon, which took the sci-fi genre and the horror genre and mixed them together. And so I love that. I like that. How can I take genres and mold them together? Because I really think, aside from, there's 2 ways that you can be fresh as a storyteller. As a filmmaker, you can create a world through visual effects that seems like nothing we've ever seen, okay? Or you can play with structure and genre, and that costs less. and nobody gives me a lot of money for my movies, so I got to do that.
Can I ask about Yosemite? It's already been name-checked here.
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone.
Talk to my researcher. She's right.
Seriously?
She's right up there.
Yellowstone. Tell me about that. What's it all about? Because apparently I don't even know what it's called.
Well, Yellowstone is another genre buster, where I've taken, you know, the Western and the American crime story, like The Godfather, and I've mixed those together. So it's, just imagine The Godfather dropped on the largest ranch in Montana.
But this is a TV project. So
It's a series.
It's a
yeah.
series.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? By the way, are we okay for time? I just want to. Yeah. 5 more minutes. One more question. Okay. Lady here. Yeah.
Art and advocacy is so important, and your film is very powerful. Are you trying to work with lawmakers in D.C. to change the underreporting on reservations?
Well, when I wrote this in 2011, there was a law that passed in 2013 that made it possible. When I wrote this, a non-native, myself, could go on a reservation and commit a violent crime against a native member of the tribe on the reservation, and they could not prosecute me. Likewise, I could not be prosecuted by the state because I wasn't technically on state land, so it was this loophole. In 2013, a law was passed that allowed for the prosecution of non-natives on reservation land who actually commit crimes against native people. So, and there was enough predatory, for a law like that to pass, you have to understand that, you know, laws don't pass unless there's a real reason for them. So it's an important law that passed. I can't speak to the enforcement of it at this point and how that's working, the structure of that, but I know the law was passed. It was motivated by, I believe it was on a res in Minnesota. It was the case that motivated the law change.
I think we can. Let's squeeze one more question in, and it'll go to that man right there.
I was wondering your process for selecting and finding your cinematographer.
I mean, it was very short. You know, I thought Beast of the Southern Wild was one of the most beautifully filmed movies I'd ever seen. He shot it on 16 millimeter with $1.8 million. And Ben is a cheating, lying little wizard who knows the tricks, because with $1.8 million and film, you don't get to, you have to get creative. You have to get really dirty and cheat and lie. And I knew I would need that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Taylor Sheridan.
Thank you very much.